All right. What's up, folks? We're going to capo it somewhere. We'll pretend like we're in Hawaii for however long I end up playing this right now. And we'll put it on the 5th fret, ukulele style. And, yeah. The thing is, though, he's probably out of tune. All right. Frank the guitar, as I've said, and it doesn't matter either way as far as, hey, do what you do. But I never know what I'm going to do, up until now at least, when it comes to the intros of In the Image Clothing Company podcast and playing Frank the guitar for, usually just a few seconds. But that's where we are, where I just said, In the Image Clothing Company podcast. This is episode 66. I'm going to tell you the title. I'm going to tell you right now. All right? It's titled, Do More, Say Less. All right? We'll get into it, but first, as I do, I'll give some discussion, some explanation, some precursors, a little bit of a rundown on what In the Image Clothing Company really is, and then we'll get into the discussion as we do. In the Image Clothing Company is where we have the things that we do, meaning there's 3 sides to our company. Here at the podcast, In the Image Clothing Company podcast, we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the truth of all things. Don't let me tell you something, right? I always say, don't believe me. That guy can tell you something. This girl can tell you something. And whatever and whoever cares. Not me if it's not true. But we speak undisputed, universal, eternal truths. But coupled with that, we got to give some context, as we do. A lot of context here. We're sinful by nature human beings. And so I'm messing up left, right, and, doing U-turns half the time. So check this out. We got 3 sides, as I said. One of the other thirds is In the Image Clothing Company, what I label as the main side of things, where I discuss the anatomy of the human body and clothing. Our whole keyword, the whole keyword, I'm not just going to say part of the word is what I mean, is allowing. That's the keyword. And after that, we also add a sentence to just one singular word, and we say allowing the body to work. In the Image Clothing Company, our whole goal physically is just allowing our physical mechanical machine, which we call the human being, to just do the only thing that our God designed it to do. We live in a modern 2025. Today is the 21st of February, 2025. And there's a lot of unnatural seating heights. And you sit there and you're cutting off your hamstrings. Those big muscles on the rear of your upper leg. And we've got a lot of things that are unnaturally flat. We've got a lot of materials that didn't even exist decades back and then ever before then. So the human body's getting altered and having to deal with things that it never had to even come in contact with in the past because they didn't even exist. Don't believe me, right? But it's just how it is. You want to know how to navigate this earthly existence? The gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of all things. Let's get into this. But before we do, check this out. Another third of our company, the other one, the last of the 3, since I told you about the other 2, is In the Image Clothing Company Music, where we do what we do with music. And I'll tell you a little bit about what that is. At least up until this point, what it has been is discussions on how to allow a guitar like my little Yamaha CGS 102A named Frank the Guitar to work with the human body. Because I put a custom rounding to this guitar. We call it a radius within those instruments. And the human hands are round, right? So we just discuss how to mesh our bodies with everything that we do because we can never work around our bodies. We're never going to get our bodies to do anything besides the only thing that they are designed to do. And I know I said that, but that's just our whole thing, dude. Really, though, because we're out of touch, man. And on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, we talk about, clothing and, the anatomy of the human body and how to just allow those 2 things to mesh when clothing designs are imbalanced and the human body has a center line. There's no dispute, no opinion, and definitely no yoga class that we were trying to have about it. The brain in our being feeds our spine through the brain stem and then down throughout that item of body, the spine that I mentioned, with the nervous system, and it goes throughout the entire body. There's the sternum in the front of the body, the spine's directly in the middle, and the nose. Those 3 things are the center of the body. There's no opinion that we can have on it. We have to stay centered. Otherwise, the body's going to be using very, 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 very many, too many, all the manys and plus more potentially. So much excess stabilizing muscles. So many? That's why I said many so many times. But then I was going into it in a way that I was like, I don't know if this is quite how I'm going to word this. But the body's just trying to stabilize. If it's being pulled out of its center line, there's only a center. There's only one of them, and it is there. Don't believe me. But, you know, we do a lot of things to just address how the body works on the main side of In The Image Clothing Company and throughout the company as 3/3 that it is, right? But we talk about sleeping naturally, eating naturally, staying hydrated, and what that really means. We got to stop just dumping water into our bodies and expecting it to stay. It's just going to flush through. I didn't understand that in my past. But I didn't understand most all this stuff that we have a whole company about, and I'm the singular founder too. So, you know, we don't know what we don't know. We can't be held accountable for what we don't know. And so we're speaking truth here. Don't believe me. We talk about sitting naturally, standing naturally, allowing the body to just move through our man-made 2025. All these things we place on top of nature that eventually just crumble and become nature again. Didn't exist in the past, so there we go. Let's get into clothing for just about as long as we do. That's a good amount of time to do it for. We wear clothing as human beings, and that's great. In all the ways that it's great. We stay modest. That's a commandment. We also just get protection from our clothing, from our shoes. We get protection from what we walk on, our pants and shirts and tops and bottoms, which are the same thing, but like just, you know, the first way that I said it was just one of the ways, and the second way was another one of them for the same thing. But here's the thing is, you know, the body's got to be regulated at a very, you know, okay, holy cow. What is going on, brother? The body's got to stay at a pretty well, oh my heavens. Y'all gonna stick around or what? I'm not upset about it. It's just I'm trying to say more than I need to. Do more, say less. In the Image Clothing Company, episode 60. Oh my gosh. How much of this is what, dude? It's funny because this has happened in the past few episodes. The intros will go similar to how the title is. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm not upset, and I'm not, like, worked up about it, but it's just, it's so unexpected, dude. I mean, I didn't expect making an episode when I was on my way back home from where I was until that was the case, and when I was there sitting in this vehicle that I was in, I was like, yeah, we gotta film this, and it's not my choice, but yeah, I think a lot of times we just gotta say less, brother. Do more, say less, because here's the thing. We discuss what we do here, and that's all I'm gonna say for right now on that. But pants for everybody. If you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're tall, short, skinny, fat, any age, any part of the globe, any time period to ever be one of us, which is a human being. That's what we are being when we are that thing. Oh my gosh. How real you want to get? Because I'm here, bro. The pants that we wear, they need to be entirely above our hips. All the way off the hips, completely. Otherwise, they're just potentially altering the hips motion. They also need to be to where the angle of them is slightly higher in the front than in the rear, because the core muscles of a human being have to and always would stay constantly and naturally activated. It's just supporting the whole entirety of our body from the top of the human being to the bottom again. So that's where they got to sit to allow it to happen. The tops that we wear, seams on top of our shoulders need to sit evenly, and I mention evenly because of the dreaded collar seam. You're looking in these t-shirts that we have nowadays, and decades back up until this point, there's a little seam up on the collar that doesn't allow the seams to sit normal, doesn't allow your shoulders to be even height, and that's really one of the biggest things altering human beings. Is that a little far-fetched? A little bit too much for you to believe? Well, don't believe me. It's the truth. We have a modification for it titled the Dreaded Collar Seam Modification under In The Image Clothing Company. You can find that in many places because we have many videos about it up until today's date. All right, so the top seams, though, yeah, they got to sit behind the shoulders. These little bones on top of the shoulders, that's what I mean by behind those things, because that's the other end of our collarbones, and that's the only way our shoulders are going to ever be allowed to sit in their neutral position, the only way they'd ever work, actually, right? And that's why you got shoulder pain. It's also because your feet. It's also because your pelvis. It's also because what you're using with your hands. The hands are essentially the shoulders. It's also things that are not your fault, like materials that human beings have invented that don't mess with the human body. And you're purchasing clothing. You don't know. How could you? I didn't until I did, right? It's as obvious as it is once we see it. So here's the thing. Those top seams we've established. Now, with button-up shirts, there's not a singular seam. There is a band of material. And whenever there's a band of material on the top and it's shaped the way that button-ups are, holy, dude. What are we doing here? Are we filming an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast? Are we on episode 66 and we're titling it Do More, Say Less? But is that the reason I'm stumbling? Because, like, hey, stop talking for a second and get down to it? Or what, you know? I mean, what's going on? I'm fine with it being this way. It's just not how I expected it, by any means. The seams at the edges of our shoulders, that's where they need to be, is at the edges, right? Because the ball and socket joint of the shoulder that's going to move, well, when we place something onto the human being, it needs to be in the same location where the joint's going to do its operation, okay? Otherwise, it's going to not allow the body to work, and that's the only thing we can do, is allow it to. We can't do anything else. You're never going to get your body to do anything. Go to the gym if you want. Go do all these routines and stretches and whatever you want to do, because we do it as human beings. I did it in my past, but now I don't, and now my body works better than I never did, except for like maybe being, firstborn. So check this out, brother. In the Image Clothing Company also has two things we discuss as prerequisites to allow the human body to stay further unaltered. First is the technique that we use for shoelacing, because all you're doing when you're lacing shoes up is you're taking something that's man-made, wrapping it around your human flesh, but just like the very lower part of it, the foot, right? Maybe up to the ankle, a little bit. Don't restrict those ankles though, right? Allow the body to work. And so that rope, there's only one technique of lacing. Don't believe me, right? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Don't believe it. Try it though. Truth manifests itself to you. We lace our shoes the only way the human foot's shaped, which is in the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique. And with that, we tie our shoes evenly over toward the inside to the center line of the body, which we established is there, okay? On both feet. That's how it needs to be, right? It's like you're doing a right-handed knot on your left foot and a left-handed knot on your right foot. You got a center line. Opposing forces on two sides. A gripped arch from those feet. Pulling inward. Internal rotation. Traveling up the entirety of the body. There you go. Good. And a third. Good. Okay, secondly, though, we remove all tags. Anything. I'm not going to further explain it, I guess, because I'm choking and it's not me. Yes, all tags from everywhere, even within the shoes. Remove them. They're doing what they're doing. I'm not even going to say it in this, at least not right now. Okay, let's get into this. Episode 66 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. Do more, say less. Check it out. Shout out to Russ. He's a rapper. So if you got a problem with rappers, cool. If you got a problem with me, cool. Stick around. Right? More context helps you. Understanding that human beings are just that, and we're all equals. Even if it's hard to see sometimes with certain people, certain places, certain events. Like, why would this person do that to me? If I were in that situation, I never would have done that. But then, like, next week you get in it. Or then you realize the reason you were actually acting that way is because 4 years ago you had a similar thing, but you were on the other end, and then you got upset with yourself. So anyway, do more, say less. Russ the rapper, he said that, right? Among other things, because it was an entire song that I listened to, and within that song, those were some of the words that were spoken by him. And that stuck with me. And people say it, right? I mean, it's not just one human being who said that, because, well, I just said it too, right? But that's the whole thing. A lot of people are just always talking about things they're going to do. They're hyping things up or whatever, dude. And then they don't do anything. So start just doing stuff. Quit talking about it. Can I use myself as an example for a second? Can I just say how amazing I am for a second? Can everybody just like look up to me for a second? I am 6'2" tall. Most people do, right? I just want to make it silly. Don't look up to me. Like, don't praise me. But I do want to use myself as an example because we're on episode 66 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast. And we've got, I have In the Image Clothing Company Podcast currently placed in one location as far as like a platform of viewing that's only audio. And on that, there is one view. Last I checked, which was yesterday. One view out of 66 episodes. Okay? I also have this placed in another location, or like a platform, if you will. Currently, this is how it is. And there, you're able to see in the Image Clothing Company podcast in visual plus audio, right? So you can watch me sitting here doing what I'm doing as you're hearing my words and whatever else I do, because sometimes I make some weird sounds as well, right? I'm aware. I'm aware, but here's the thing. I understand. I do it intentionally sometimes, start beatboxing or whatever, or like, dude, there's some weird noises that have come out of my physical being in past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. I'm saying it because it's the case. All right, check this out. On that platform, visual plus audio, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to give some number as if like I know exactly what it is, but I mean, under 100, as far as I'm aware, views, and it might be, yeah. I mean, it's under 100. I know that. I mean, at least pretty pretty darn sure. 66 episodes were in this, and I've got what, let's say accumulation 101 potential, right? Somewhere around there maybe, but probably even a little bit less views for this one third of our company. On the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, I've got, and anybody can crank out whatever content. It could just be pointless or stuff that isn't really actually beneficial or whatever, but it's not for the sake of like I'm gonna try to make as much as I can to be like, look how much I did, but it doesn't really matter because there's no information in it. That's not the case. And on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, where we talk about things like the anatomy of the body and just the natural workings, we've got series, man. I mean, I've got well over 150 videos on there, and there has been more, but things that were filmed prior to actually being officially in the Image Clothing Company. It was just Evan Strong, right? Which is me. I'm still the person doing it as of, current time that I'm speaking, today's date, if you will. But, which I told you what it is, right? It's the 21st of February, 2025, brother. But yeah, we got over 150 videos on there, and we have series. We have the Truth Behind series. And I've gone into push versus pull. I've gone into pull-ups, the core, the balls of the feet, certain things like that, right? And we have the series that I talk about because it's there, which is how blank affects body mechanics, right? Body mechanics. The human body is a mechanical machine. When I say blank, it's just we insert things there. How pant cuffs affects body mechanics. How shirt cuffs affect body mechanics. You know what I mean? I mean, we've got a lot of things there. How zippers affect body mechanics, how buttons, oh, actually, we might not have that yet. I've discussed buttons, but I don't know if we have a whole video like that about them. But all the things that we do, right? I mean, a lot of videos like that, man. We've got series, we've got, I have videos just discussing the body itself. I just started a new series yesterday titled The Natural Function series. And it was on the feet because I figured well, it's not even about what I figured, but that's just what I did first. But it's a good place to start for that series at the foundation of our bodies, right? Being the feet. So we've got a lot of series on that side of the company. Oh, well, I mean, there's the universal patterning series where I go through and show, like, if you're sitting down cross-legged, which leg's on this side versus that one. And I can, like, read your mind, but, like, not really. It's just that clothing causes us to do certain things because it's placed onto our human flesh. The same thing happens across the entirety of the globe. We potentially get into these very deeply ingrained chronic patternings with scar tissue and shortened muscles, stretched skin, vice versa, and whatever, all throughout the body, right? And that's what we do physically within In the Image Clothing Companies, get out of these chronic patternings. And so the Universal Patterning Series, I said one thing about crossing the legs. I said clasp your hands together, which fingers on top, look up, see which way you look. All these things, see which arm can reach easier across the body. And it's just, I mean, it really is just in almost every single case, it's the same thing. Because you're a human fleshly operable machine placed inside of a man-made stitched thing that we call clothing, but nowadays is not something that could really actually pass as real clothing because it's more damaging than anything else. A lot of the clothing that's being made nowadays in 2025 and past years. So we've got a lot going on, dude. I mean, it's not just like I'm cranking out content for the sake of saying, like, I made 4,000 videos. Look how cool I am. But each one of them's like a 4-second clip of like something random and weird. No, they're almost all between 30 minutes and a half. 30 minutes and a half hours, almost what I said. No, but they're almost all at least 30 minutes long and filled with just me talking, right? Just speaking, giving context, giving understandings of what they are, things you don't have to believe me on, but it's just how the body works. I didn't design it. I can't decide it. Episode 62 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. That's what that was titled. And that's what I mean. I mean, we just discuss things as they are. Within the series I started yesterday, like I said, the natural function series, and I talked about the feet, that's going to live on forever. And that could have been played to people however many thousands of years ago, and it would apply to their feet the exact same. Because I didn't design any of this stuff. I just understand it, and I'm just talking about it and speaking on it as it is. So we got a lot going on, man. Like I said, the amount of podcast episodes we've put out, and I'm doing all this stuff, and well, the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, I mean, I don't know if there's a video on there that's got over 20 views for a specific video, right? It's not about that. I mean, there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, one of the earlier ones, titled The Long Game. Because that's the whole thing. That's why I'm so clear to mention we speak undisputed, universal, eternal, never-changing, unchanging. Actually, that's another way to just word the same thing. Truths, right? We just talk about things as they are, and so it doesn't matter if this company doesn't take off for another 45 years. Meaning, that wouldn't change what we're talking about. That wouldn't change how relative the things that we speak on are. That wouldn't change how much impact we can have from the things that we have put out today. I'm going to sit on that for a second. Because the whole thing is, I'm doing more and saying less. People don't even know I have a company. I'll go over to Institute, for example, right, within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We've got Institute. I've talked about that quite a bit within the podcast. In the Image Clothing Company podcast is the one that I've talked about it in. And over there, I mean, I'm around people. They ask me what I do or what I've been up to that week. If they saw me last week, because we have it on Wednesday nights, and now it's another Wednesday, and they've seen me again. You know, they're just asking me those kind of questions. I don't mention my clothing company. I think I've only talked, outside of my own family, I think I've only spoken to one person. Really, I was within someone's house, and, you know, there was a few people there, but, right, I mean, just one scenario like that, like 3, 4 people, 5 maybe. There was 5 people in the room at one point, right? I'm just trying to make this as real as it is. I think outside of my own biological family, that's the only other people I've even told that I have a clothing company about, right? And it's not about clothing only, right? It's about addressing the human body's natural function. It's about preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ and just speaking on things as they are. But the whole thing is, like, I'm not sharing this, you know? I'm not out there just, like, trying all I can do to advertise, and in your face, bro, right? Like, no, dude. And not that, you know, I mean, times and places, not that that's always the wrong thing to do. For certain things in certain times, certain ways, for certain reasons. In the snow season, when it's 20 below freezing, many times, many ways. I don't know, dude. But this is what I'm talking about. I'm sitting here and I can be as silly as I could be, but I'm also speaking things really good. Aren't I? Validate me. No, please don't. It doesn't matter if you think so. What I mean is I'm discussing things that are just true, right? Within the podcast, we're talking about things that are going to help people for so many evers. All of the evers. They'll help every humans that are them. Because if so, then good. Right? I mean, I just want to make it silly, dude. People are out here just talking about it. They sit there talk about what's going to happen, what's going to come up. They're going to start this thing this time and then later. And they tell you all these accomplishments that they, oh, wait, no, that was my friend, they end up saying, you know, right? I mean, it doesn't matter, dude. Don't talk about it. Don't let me tell you what to do, but don't talk about it. Just do what you're going to do. Listen to this for a second. Dude, my emotion within this episode and the way that I'm feeling, the way that you potentially saw / heard and both maybe, right, a few minutes ago. And I was like, man, I don't even know, dude. And I'm kind of sitting here like, it almost seems like I'm frustrated. I'm going to turn it off, maybe restart it and pretend like I never started in the first place and pretend like there was no first draft when I'm on the second one and that's the one I post. And you know what I mean? That's what I mean. So now you know, because I told you. At least you have a high potential to, because I explained it quite well. Here's the thing, unless you don't think it was quite well, right? I'm out here just doing more and saying less, dog. I mean, let me use myself as an example. That's why I said that a few minutes ago, because I don't want to be like sitting on my high horse. But I mean, if we're just speaking things as they are, that's what I'm doing. I really am doing actually quite a lot. And I'm not talking about it. And so the whole thing with describing the amount of views at this time and everything, right? You know the date, you know the amount of videos. I mean, in the Image Clothing Company music, there's a lot on there as well. A lot of informational stuff as far as setups go, and just cool music that I've made, you know. And I mean, I'm really doing stuff, dude. I'm good at guitar. Don't believe me? Don't believe me, right? The first one was a question. The second one was a statement. But I said the same words each time. I'm just out here just doing what I'm doing, man. Because a lot of people, what ends up happening is they're only doing things because they're hoping to get validation from other people. That's why I say don't try to like validate me about it, right? I don't want the congratulations. I want the impact. You know? I mean, we could be on episode 100 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. That'd be 44 more from now. That's shout out to Logic the rapper, dude. Bobby. Anyway, Robert Bryson Hall. Robert, yeah, the third, I think. Anyway, dude, I don't care for the validation. I actually appreciate it on the other end, where people intentionally don't congratulate me on things. Because I'm just out here doing what I'm doing. I'm not doing this to please people. I'm going to say this is funny. This might become yeah, we might do more with this later going down the road because I love this. But, you know, I was going to ask this question, like, who are you trying to please? And let's make it a little bit silly because it reminds me of a specific movie that came out a while back. Right? I'm going to say it like this. Who are you trying to please? Ghostbusters! You know what I mean? I don't even know actually how you how it's originally said, but it's something similar to that. Who are you going to call? Oh, well, you can say it on that end too, because the reason I'm saying that is who are you trying to please? You trying to please your homies and have them look up to you when we're equals? Or are you trying to please God and not care about the views from other human beings, not care about the validation that you think you're getting until you realize that it was just a fake compliment that they said to somebody else when they had a similar experience the other day, and they just know the words to say, you know? I mean, who are you trying to please, right? But then, like I was realizing as I said that, we can say how Ghostbusters actually asks it. Who are you going to call, right? You're going to call somebody who might not pick up, or are you going to call somebody who always answers? When I call, my God answers. But when I'm calling my homies, you know, they might be out with somebody else, and I thought I was their best friend, but now they're hanging out with somebody who I think they might actually care about more than me, right? I mean, who are you trying to please? I'm doing what I'm doing because I'm being prompted to. I'm being guided through the things I do. So as I go, I row my boat down this road, and now we know it's okay to just sit here and play with words all day, right? I don't know, dude. Except I do. I know that it doesn't matter if you're trying to please a homie, you're trying to please a girl, you're a dude, and you got this girl who like, man, if I start doing this thing, she might think it's so cool. So I'm gonna talk about all this stuff instead of just doing it. You know what I'm talking about, dude? If not, this will benefit you to try to understand what I'm saying. Don't believe me. Don't listen to Evan Strong's opinions, because I'm ideally having no opinions of what I'm talking about under In the Image Clothing Company, right? But this is how it is, dude. I mean, a lot of people out there just talking, and then nothing ever happens, you know? And I'm on episode 66 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. and I've got one view. What am I going to do? Pack my things and head back home after I moved across the country to start a life and it's not working out on the first day? That's not what I've done as far as that's a hypothetical, but stuff like that happens, right? Nothing happens overnight that's actually good. Check this out, dude. Good things take time. And I'm not out here trying to please people, dude. I'm really not. That's why I say, like, you got a problem with me? Good. Stick around, right? You got a problem with me? Stick around. You got a problem within the Image Clothing Company? You think we have opinions? Stick around. You know, we got a lot of context we give. We're not speaking on opinions. We're speaking the truth as it is, other than when we mess up on what we're saying, right? Because we're actually not perfect. Wow, right? But, I mean, just stop talking about things all the time and just do stuff. You know? I mean it. Don't let me tell you what to do, but that's how you're actually going to get stuff done. It's not about who's accomplishing more in some kind of worldly sense of looking at things, but that's what I'm saying, is that I'm not saying very much, but I'm doing the things that I'm being prompted to do. And so In The Image Clothing Company is now as big as it is, right? And it is actually kind of big. I mean, how many, well, no comparison, but just for the sake of, again, the amount of what we're doing, because if the goal is to have a podcast and to put out episodes, well, then we shouldn't let that goal be determined by how many views we're getting, because in that case, if you're looking at it that way, your actual goal is to get views on your podcast. My goal is not to get views. My goal is to make the thing happen. Do the thing, bro, right? I mean, go out there and do the thing, dude. You know, make an episode or two, or 66 of them as of today's date, right? Because the views will come if they do. Oh, there's a movie. There's a lot of movies people have made, but I'm going to mention one of them specifically. I don't know the title of it, so sorry. And I'd love to give you credit if I knew, but there's some words that I've spoken. There's a movie, and in the movie, there's this phrase that somebody gets spoken to, and it says, "If you build it, he will come." And this dude was out there, building a thing for somebody to come. That is all I'm going to say throughout that little explanation. I'm going to just, say it out of my own being now, but there was a movie where that happened. But it happens in life. Like this. We get promptings. If you do this thing, good things will come from it. Hey, you ever heard of Noah in the Bible? Right? Noah didn't all of a sudden get downpoured on. He's like, oh, shoot, everybody build a boat as quick as you can. Water's coming down. Noah's sitting there and he gets a prompting. And Noah's like, all right, weird. I live in a desert. It rarely rains. And I'm being told to build a massive boat. An ark? Why? That's weird to me, Angel, right? Noah's saying. And Noah builds this big old ark, dude. And everyone's like, dude, what are you doing? You really think it's gonna rain, right? People looking at Evan Strong right now. Dude, holy cow. You have 66 episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and on one of the platforms you've placed it, 1 view? You might want to try something else, right? No thanks. I don't care what you think. At all. Noah could have just said, man, maybe I'll build like a really fast chariot for my horses to pull, because if we got to get out of this land, I could understand something happening here, but rain in the desert? Talk about a deluge of rain? Talking about looking over to see a little bit of a cloud somewhere. That's 1 view, right? It's got to start somewhere. You're not going to have rain dumping without a little cloud forming. You're not going to have 7 billion plus views if every person were to just come in contact within the Image Clothing Company podcast, right? Why not? Could happen. How who's going to limit what? I'm not saying something to limit something, right? I mean, I serve a God who's perfect. And he's telling me to build a boat in a dry desert. What? I don't get that. I don't get it. Noah's saying. Why would I build a boat Doesn't even rain here. We're walking, scrounging, and hounding the ground and trying to find some water, Father. Wow, talk about lyricism. I'm killing all these words with this, bro. It's like a disco. But this, though, is a depiction of Noah looking up at the sky saying, it's dry, Father. What are you telling me? You send me an angel to tell me to build a boat? And I got sand in my shorts all day when I'm out there just trying to survive. Because of the lack of water in the land that I currently am in, Noah's saying. And he built a boat. Long story finished. I don't know, right? I mean, he built a boat, dude. I mean, he just built it. He's like, I don't know why, but I know that you're saying to. And he built a boat. A big one. Put all the animals on there. 2 of each kind. Put his family on that boat and he was safe. But everybody else got wiped away from the water. The whole earth got flooded. Now, people are looking at him like he's crazy. People maybe are kind of on board with him in certain ways, but then they don't fully understand the assignment. They're like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. And Noah's like, okay, well, put yourself in my shoes for about 14 seconds. Probably sandals, back then, but probably not wearing Denver leather boots by Zero, right? Xero, that's what I'm currently wearing, and I love them. No affiliation as of today's date or up until today's date, but they're probably out there in sandals. Noah's out there just dry. But apparently there's going to be a flood, and his faith wouldn't let him do anything else besides build that boat. Even though it made no sense, bro. He's like, yeah, I mean, I can't deny this. I know I'm supposed to, but this doesn't make much sense. And so Noah's out there just doing more and not talking about it. The more he talks about it, maybe it doesn't make sense to a higher degree, right? Starts talking about it, it's like, shoot, this is weird. And so he just puts his head down and works. Builds a big boat. It's a big boat. I told you the measurements in the scriptures. Now, as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but I've read it at one point. I'm pretty sure it tells you how big the boat was, and it's a big boat, man. Without modern machinery, modern tools, Noah's doing things that a lot of people are just thinking he's just so needing to do something else with his time. Now let's fast forward to 2025. Little Evan Strong sitting here on the floor, filming episode 66 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Do More, Say Less. And here's the thing. I've done a lot. And I haven't talked about it because the fruits of the labor come later. I mean, Noah's not going to go bragging to all his friends that he's built this big boat. They'll probably just look at him like, okay, I see you built a boat. That's good. And think there's no need, So his friends are looking at it like, all right, you built a boat. You going to do something productive now? And then they get flooded away and Noah's safe. You see that, dude? That's how it is. I'm sitting here with my body functioning. Not because I'm thinking something, not because I got an opinion on something, because my God, our living God, Jesus Christ, designed not only my body, but every one of our bodies universally in his image. First 3 words in our company name. 5 words, In the Image Clothing Company. Okay. So I'm sitting here, my body's working. People looking at me eating different. And they're like, what are you? Oh, okay. All right. They're looking at me and I'm walking a little different than a lot of other people walking nowadays because I'm walking naturally and they're altered by modern things. In most cases, it's not their fault. Most of the things that are the reasons as to why. Some of the things are lifestyle choices, but a lot of it we just don't have any idea until we do. So that's what we do here is just discuss the things that are happening. And so, people are looking at me and I'm doing things that are opposing what a lot of people think that you should be doing as a 25-year-old man in 2025. And, maybe they know, as far as like the people who do, that I've made episodes of podcasts and I've, started making a bunch of these videos talking about the body, talking about clothing. And maybe they know that we've got another third as well, and I have a little guitar that I play, but they don't see the whole picture because they didn't get visited by that angel that sat next to Noah that he couldn't deny, right? Noah's wife, supporting as she is. Man, Noah, I understand that you're doing the right thing, and I can tell that you're just supposed to be doing this for some reason, but, well, how am I supposed to understand? And what about like a fallback, a little backup plan in case there's no rain, she's saying to her husband, right? I mean, if he put his focus anywhere else besides where he'd been told to, he would have been being disobedient. Yeah, I am relating myself to Noah. I don't care what you think about that. Thinking I'm claiming to be a prophet. I'm not claiming to be a prophet. At least not right now. Wait till episode 67. I'm just kidding. But who knows, right? I'm just saying, stop condemning people before you know what's going on. And a lot of people have no idea what I'm doing, because in a lot of these cases, I don't. I just know that it's right. And I know it because the fruits of the labor come. And I'm free of pain for the first time in decades. My body functions the way it's designed to. Words are flying out of my mouth talking about the anatomy of the human body, and I've never sat in any kind of class to teach me that. I haven't been sitting up, on the computer doing all the research on the internet. I haven't been opening textbooks, and I got no kind of like mentor that's out here, been a physical therapist for like 9,000 years, and he's all knowledgeable. No, I'm just sitting here and things are happening. And what I'm doing is praying, saying, hey, Father, please just don't let me do anything else besides be obedient. Because I'm getting people telling me this and that about who I am and what I'm doing, and if it's a waste of time, or if it's something good, but hey, maybe do something else as well, right? Yeah, you can have your hobbies type of thing, right? Okay, Noah, you want to start building boats? That's great, but we still have to plant our food. And Noah's out there like, just tunnel vision on the boat. And his wife's over there like trying to provide for the family, feeling like she's having to make up for the other half of the work that Noah would be doing if he wasn't building a boat. But Noah's just over there saying, wait, I guess he's not saying very much. But all of a sudden there's an ark. This dude just built an ark. Barely any words came out of his mouth. The people around him looking at him like, all right, okay, right? Everyone else is bragging about all the things they didn't do, but they're trying to convince you they did. Noah's got a big old boat. And nobody seems to know why, other than the little bit that he did say is, I was told to. Rain's coming. And everyone's like, really? In the desert? I don't think so, Noah, but you do you, brother. Right? People looking at me saying this and that about whatever. I've been telling people how to lace their shoes correct because it's the only way the human foot's shaped for about a year now. And now my body's been transformed because I was doing those things and still currently am and will continue to going forward. And not that I'm trying to condemn anybody, but I'm just saying they denied truth. It's not about they didn't listen to me, but that's why I say don't believe me. But I'm speaking truth. Give it a try. Give it a try. Right? You go to a restaurant, you're out there, you got a lot of choices. There's some foods that look a little bit questionable to me. I don't know. I don't know if I'd like to eat that. Probably not. But you never tried it, right? And so you're going years saying that about the same item of food. Someone's like, dude, you'll like it. It may look weird. For some reason, you seem like you don't want to eat it, but you'll like it. Just try it. But you're going along saying, no, no. And then a third time, no. But then one day you end up trying it. And then you're like, oh my gosh, this is so tasty, right? And then the person that was with you like multiple times saying, hey, just try it. They're like, dude, I told you. It's not because I said something, but you will like it, right? They don't get to tell you if you like it or not and have that be like the actual outcome. They don't decide how your taste buds receive flavor, you know? I don't decide how your feet work, but they only work how they do, right? So lace them within the Image Clothing Company shoelacing technique. I can tell you that, right? But I'm out here just doing the things that I'm talking about. Episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, whichever one it was number-wise. There's one titled Preaching What I Practice, okay? On the other end of practicing what you preach. I'm just doing things and then talking about it, right? I'm doing more and not saying very much about it. It's not about speaking words. You ever heard of people who can't? What do? Sometimes a lot more than everybody else. Yeah, man. So, I'll be around people, and if this sounds like I'm saying something that sounds like something, then cool. But a lot of people are just talking about things all the time. I used to use this phrase, talking about things. And, are we going to just sit around here and talking about... Yeah, oh my gosh. You can tell where I'm at emotionally within this episode of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 66, titled Do More, Say Less. And the reason that I'm feeling this way is because of this episode. It's not like something's going on in my life and I'm upset about it. I mean, yeah, I'm talking about what's going on in my life, but I'm not having the emotion that's coming through this for any other reason besides I know that people feel that they need to just talk about things, but they don't feel good about it, but they want to sound impressive, Yeah, we don't want to be doing that if our, focus is to just feel content. You don't want to be trying to impress people because then, you'll get the high when you do because you've talked about all these things you've done and everyone seems to be praising you. But then later you say it to someone else and they're like, okay. And they don't care. That's my response to people. People try to impress me about things. They tell me this whole 5-minute story. I'm like, okay. Because that's my response. I've just heard you speak some words. And are you done? Whether that's good things you've done or whether they're not good things or whether it took you 4 whole months or you did it in just, whatever. My response is, okay. Because it's you doing that thing. Don't do it for me. Don't do those things to impress me. I don't care. Nobody needs to care that I have, right? So let me give a little bit of context. The reason I told you how many episodes of the podcast I'm on and how many videos I've done on the other 2 sides of the company is because you guys got to think I'm so cool now because I've done so much work. Oh gosh. I related myself to a couple people. Man, I'm so good at this. You guys better be impressed. Or I'm going to have to step up my game even more. That's why I did all this in the first place, right? So that was just in character to give a little bit of clarification if you couldn't tell, but you probably could tell. I'm not saying this for some kind of reason like, look at me. I'm saying this to say, look at our God. Noah didn't build an ark and then he's expecting everyone to be like, you guys should have believed me, Noah's saying. He wasn't saying that. Noah built an ark and he said, you guys are living filthy lives. And I'm out here. Noah had the potential, right? Let's say it like this and I'll finish what I was saying. To go do whatever he wanted. Noah could have had all the harlots he wanted. And Noah could have gone and worked for the big companies and got all the gold and shiny things and fine-twined linen and tinkly, twinkly ornaments and all the garbage. But Noah didn't do those things. Noah sweat himself to death in a desert, building a huge ship, regardless of if anybody cared, because most people didn't. Not only did they not care, they kind of look at him with my response, right? Like, okay, which is fine. They don't got to care that Noah's building an ark. Noah's building an ark. If the dude's crazy, the dude's crazy. Let him be. Right? Oh, gosh. If Evan Strong's crazy, he's crazy. Let me be. Please, leave me alone. I mean it. I mean it. I mean it 3 times. I do. I mean it. Please leave me alone. That's 4. But here's what I'm going to say about what I just said. I'm going to just further it because I was already into it partially. Noah, I love that my voice sounded like that. You think I'm crazy? Yet? If not yet, stick around. You will. That's funny. But Noah's out there sweating in the desert. He's out there having so much hard time, probably. He's probably having a really hard time building a big, huge boat in a desert. Just the physical aspect of doing that. But then everybody around him is telling him he's crazy. And the only person that told him to build the boat is our God and his messenger, the angel who sat there and told Noah, right? Or however, I mean, yeah, right? I don't want to say the story exactly how it was if I'm wrong, because don't believe me. Noah didn't say, hey, believe me, everybody. Believe me, I've got an opinion. And I think that I want to build this boat and that everybody should agree with me, says Noah. That's not what he said. What Noah did is go around to people saying, you guys are wicked. Hey, guess what? I am too in the ways that I am, but I'm righteous enough to know that I'm not in charge. Can I say that? Me, Evan Strong, can I say I'm righteous enough to know that I'm not in charge? Can we say that? Is that okay? I think we're going to say that. That's what we'll say. Because Noah wasn't trying to convince anybody of anything he was saying. Noah knew God. And he knew that a flood was coming. Even though he was probably thinking to himself, like, really? We're in a desert. I know, I get it, and I'm doing it, but all right, I mean, a flood? As he's like hammering in these stakes into the boat, he's questioning it as well. He's like, I mean, man, it might be easier, to just kind of stop this boat halfway through the construction project. It's a big boat. He's looking up praying. He's like, I get it. You said to do this, but man, maybe they're right. All these people talking about things, and gosh, man, he wasn't saying much other than truth that he knew. He knew the amount of truth that he did, and he was sharing it. And he knew there was going to be some rain coming. So what, like an inch of rain or 2? Right? In a desert, dude. Nah, deluge of rain, brother. Enough rain to cover the entirety of our globe. The whole surface of the earth covered in water. And Noah's just doing his thing. He wasn't out there talking about it, bragging to people about how far along he was on his woodshop project. Noah was just bold about it, saying, all right, do your thing, but this is going to happen. This just is what it is. I'm building a boat. Doesn't make sense to me either. But I can't deny it. Flood's coming. I mean, he just did it, man. He just put his head down and worked. He missed out on time doing things with his homies, with his family. But he built a boat. And how many thousands of years ago was that? And now you got some kid sitting on the floor filming a podcast episode, talking about it. I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here talking about it and having it help me and potentially change lives on the other end of this podcast, the receiving end of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 66, titled Do More, Say Less. If Noah hadn't just done it, instead of talking about it. I mean, if Noah's going around saying all this and all that and 4 other things to all his homies, saying, hey, I think I'm going to build a boat, guys, so validate me about it. If he was basing the outcome of whether that art got finished or even started in the first place on if people thought he was cool, if he was doing it, because he was doing it, or if they thought that he had a good idea, if they thought he was right, if all the girls thought he was this hunky man, swinging those hammers out there on a boat project. Who knows? Just building like a big old yard ornament. Noah's out there just big and building the boat because he got into construction and, he's just working on something. People looking at me like, all right, cool. You film whatever you want, all these videos, talk about things, think you know what you're doing, cool, right? Noah's wife, she's like, I love you, Noah, but a flood, right? People looking at me, Evan Strong, potentially. I'm just saying, right? Anybody. It doesn't have to be me, but I'm using myself as an example on all the ends that I do. People looking at me saying, dude, you're pretty bold. I mean, you sit there all the time saying the body only works how it does. You're saying that we're wasting our time doing workouts. You're trying to tell us that the human body doesn't actually sit in chair height things when that's how the world's structured nowadays, Evan. What are you talking about? I mean, I get it. You're passionate about it. You've got passion, and that's good. That's good. It's good to have passion, Noah, right? But a flood? Dude, I don't know. Build like a 5-foot canoe, Noah. You got passion to build a boat. Great. But we live in a desert. People out here doing what they're doing already, Noah. You think something's going to change? You think you got an idea about something? I mean, do it, sure. Right? People looking at me like that. Or if they're not, potentially. I'm just saying, right? Using myself as an example of this happens, man. And I see it in the ways that it is happening currently and up until now from the founding of In the Image Clothing Company. Right? Because a lot of my family, they understand that I have this thing that I'm doing that I've labeled as In the Image Clothing Company. But they don't really understand what I do about it. And I don't expect them to right now. But I'm playing the long game. Noah says, all right, cool, maybe the flood doesn't come until I'm dead even. But it's prosperity. Prosperity? Posterity? How do you say that? Is it like his offspring and their offspring and potentially the ones after that? Somebody maybe down the road might end up encountering some big old flood. And if so, then Noah just knows that he's supposed to build the boat. And he did it. Right? If nobody believes me about this stuff, well, they never need to. But if nobody starts to understand that what we talk about under In the Image Clothing Company is just the truth until, however long, it doesn't matter. Well, then these videos are here. And they'll still to apply to human beings forever. Is that bold or what? Am I still right? Am I right about something? Have I actually come to a conclusion on my own that I want the rest of every person that is one of us to believe? Well, the answer is no. But what I've done is put myself aside and realized I'm never going to get my body to do anything. So let me pick this apart and understand how it works and why it just isn't. Because I didn't design it, so I can't decide it. I mean, Noah's not designing the weather patterns, right? the amount of rainfall a year, Noah's not over there saying oh, this year maybe I didn't allow the sky to drop as much water as we needed. Next year I'll tweak it. Noah's not in charge of that. But he's in charge of doing what he was told to do and build a boat. And I'm in charge of doing what I'm told to do. And sure, I haven't had very much, and at many cases in the past years at all, none, money, right? Currently, I got no money. We could get all funny with that kind of thing and try to sing and talk and rhyme about the time I had so much money, and it was funny because I put all my importance on some things that always change, right? Talk about inflation. People got big old egoic heads because their pockets are also getting larger, right? Sure, I could go get a job. But sure, Noah could have just stopped. His whole family would have died in the flood. You know, I could give up on this whole In The Image Clothing Company thing because I could adopt the views that the other people are saying. Dude, I mean, I get it, but I mean, you've been doing this for how long now, and you got like almost no views, and you know, you're a really passionate kid, Evan, but maybe try to put it into something else, a little bit more beneficial, right? But if you just hold on a little bit, then oh gosh, who are you trying to please, dude? No wonder. That's where I was going with that, right? Instead of who you gonna call Ghostbusters, that's what, you know, under that movie Ghostbusters. I was thinking the other, it was, you know, a week or two ago, it came to my mind as like, who are you trying to please? No wonder, because you're trying to please men over God. And everybody's out here claiming that they're trying to be faithful. Then they'll do something to impress somebody else instead of doing something that they know they should have. Right? So everybody admire me because I'm so amazing at things and I'm talking down to you. Right? Again, I just want to make it silly. I'm not doing that. I mean, times and places, so many times in my life, I was doing things just to be seen, just to impress like a woman, for example. My whole upbringing growing up, my dad, right? And my whole problem I have with my earthly father that I didn't choose, and I sit here and complain about it all the time, but in all seriousness, right? I mean, I do so many things just to please my earthly dad. Growing up with him, right? Till I was allowed to actually, in all the ways, because that's the thing, in all the ways that I was actually allowed to separate from him, right? Once I'm 18, I'm an adult. Sure, I can go do whatever I want. But it's, again, who are you trying to please? I was in that situation for many more reasons than just surface level. And I was praying through it in the times that I was. But even in the times that I wasn't praying through it and doing things out of being told and being prompted to, I learned so much in those times that I couldn't be sharing now if I hadn't still been there, right? Meaning like past 18 years old when I legally could have gotten away from this experience and, you know, dynamic and situation that wasn't something that should have been there if I'm deciding should haves, but I'm not deciding should haves, and good thing, because I learned a lot and I grew a lot. I got stretched and pulled like that taffy machine, right? I mean, what are you going to do, right? You're going to go out there talking about all your things that you are never going to do? Or are you just going to do something, dude? It's not that you're expected to, like, do something, but just don't talk about it then if you're not going to, right? That's the whole thing. No, I mean, people aren't expecting you to do stuff unless they are. But meaning, you know, people got all the expectations they want. You don't got to do anything because somebody else is expecting it. But then just don't talk about stuff. I mean, just live. Just do what you're going to do and do it. Talking about stuff isn't doing the thing. You can sit there and waste your breath all you want, right? Casting your pearls before swine. Oh my gosh. Because what if they're not impressed about it, right? What if I had this big dream The world will know my name because I will have a company about the body and everyone will know how great I am. No, I want to look to the great I am and say, what do you need me to do, Father? Regardless of if I ever get a validation about this or not. I'm saying potentially years this company doesn't come off the ground the way that people are expecting that plane to actually be in the air, right? I spend my whole life with some training wheels on my plane, The plane's like wearing ankle weights so that I can get up to some speed but not actually take off my whole existence until I die. And then once I die, all of a sudden in the Image Clothing Company just, Shout out to nuclear bombs, dude. I mean, you got a mushroom cloud of mind alterations. What is happening? I'm just saying, in all seriousness, what if I go my whole entire life and we have that one view? We got those 40 views or those 100 views that we've got in whatever way we do or did or whatever. And then the day I die, all of a sudden, the company takes off. And these eternal truths are now helping the next generation. And maybe that was actually the plan. I'm in here for the long game. I'm in here doing what I'm doing because I was told to do it. I'm not doing air quotes, by the way. It kind of looked like it. I'm just kind of like pointing. Yeah. I mean it, dude. I'm just doing this stuff because I'm told to. And, well, it's probably pretty gratifying to Noah. Not because another human being said something, but because water started coming from the sky, dude, at an unimaginable level and amount, right? You've got your meteorologist back in X amount of BC, right? Whenever Noah was living. And he's like, all right, this week, actually, this just in, today we're predicting, and he's drowning because the earth flooded. And Noah's over on the boat like, shoot, man, you guys didn't listen. That's unfortunate. I didn't say to believe me, Noah's saying. He just said, pray to God and stop wasting your time with harlots and drinking and all these sins that you have been told are not okay. It's okay to mess up, Noah's saying. I was halfway through building this boat and I was cussing at things and throwing tools, right? Noah's sinning left and right too. He's not perfect. But he kept his head down and did more and said less. All these people out here, at the clubs and getting all these women all over them because they're talking about their 45-figure business. And Noah's just about his business. He's out there just doing his own thing. You know what I'm saying? I hope so. Except I don't hope for anything. Right? Noah could hope that he heard wrong and the floods weren't coming and he didn't have to do all that weird boat building exercise. What if it was just what if it was just an exercise? What if Noah was just told to build a boat to see if he'd do it? You think he still would have? If there was no flood? What if Noah got done building the boat? It's an ark, right? But yeah, this is a big old piece of watercraft, right? A flotation device, a vessel for his vessel and his family's vessels as well, and 2 of each of all the animals. What if Noah would have got done building that boat, and he's like, man, I don't know, there's no rain yet. Shoot, all right, 40 more years go by. Noah's laying there like dying on his deathbed, talking to his wife. Yeah, maybe there is no flood, and then he dies, right? What? He still would have done it. Because he couldn't deny his own faith. He couldn't deny his living God. He had a strong testimony knowing, hey, I don't care. What if? What if those rains don't come? I'm going to still finish this boat. And he finished the boat. And the rains came down and the floods came up. Right? Nursery. Primary. Within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we used to sing a song that was that one when I was a little kid, talking about Noah's story. Man, I love it. I'm yelling half the time, and the other half the time I'm just all like real convicted. I'm convicted in the yelling too, but that's what I mean is I love to show the dynamics that human beings have. Like I'm saying, I'm like metaphorically throwing tools right now, dude, because I'm going through it. Don't feel bad for me. I just mean I'm doing more and saying less. Because if I start opening my mouth about stuff, I'm going to start questioning things more, potentially, right? You start talking about it, and all of a sudden you're giving yourself more things to be like a little bit doubting about. Noah, he's looking around and like, ugh, it's still dry, right? If he starts opening his mouth and saying stuff, he might start to doubt. You ever heard of Peter walking across the waves? Instead of tunnel vision straight ahead at Christ, walking toward him, he's looking left to right at the waves. Starts to doubt his own faith. We don't want to be doing that. So keep your mouth shut. Do more. No, just kidding. Don't do more. Because that's the thing is we're not trying to get people to like do more to be like worth it. But if you are doing something, then that's ideally the thing that you're doing is something. And just talking about stuff isn't doing something. So either don't do anything and just hang out or do something. But don't just talk about things. Because you're only doing that to impress other people. So cut it out. Don't let me tell you something, right? Don't believe me. But the thing is, if you still feel like you're not worth it, and you still feel like you're not validated, and you still feel like you're just lost in this whole sea of life, then stop talking about it. Put your head down and pray. That's doing something. Do more. When we say that, do more, say less. Doing more can be putting your nose in the scriptures. We're not saying this like your parents said it growing up. Go out there and work harder. No. I'm saying go spend some more time alone. And you might feel like you're not accomplishing anything, but go get into some deep prayer and your life will change. That's doing more. But don't talk about it. Don't go telling all your friends how long you've been praying for so that they praise you about it. You're such a righteous person. I wish I was like you and spent, right? I mean, you oh, listen to this, dude. I'm going to throw a wrench. I'm not mad. I just mean, it's crazy. I'm really not upset. I mean, that's what's so funny too about it. Like the contradiction between like, there's all this passion, but I'm not upset. Some of this stuff's weird, dude. Well, first what I'm going to say, I will finish that. I'll talk about that. But I'm going to say this because I was kind of right here before I started saying that. I was a little kid one time, teenager. Right. Those are kind of two separate things. But I was a teenager, and I was in this house back before I lived with my mom. I currently do live with my mom. And, I was here one day, and my mom, like, walked upstairs or walked outside or did something, maybe ran a really quick errand, and she came back. And I was kind of like having a struggle I was going through in that moment. And I'm telling my mom, like, Mom, I said a 15-minute prayer while you were gone. And what I was expecting was my mom's validation. I was expecting my mom to be like, oh, son, let me bake you a cake, right? Let me applaud you and put your name on a billboard. I mean, that's what I was expecting. Because I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I mean, I was praying, I'm like, during my prayer, I'm like, let me just think of what else I can talk to you about, Father, because I want this to last until my mom walks in, so it's almost like she interrupted my prayer, so I'll look so good. Wow. I mean, that's saying more and doing less. You're doing less in that prayer because your intentionality is now gone. And your priorities are in the wrong place. You're doing it to please your mother. I'm talking to younger Evan Strong, myself, right? The founder of In The Image Clothing Company. The guy who has this podcast and has been the sole person who's said any words in any of the episodes up until at least this one, today's date, episode 66 of In The Image Clothing Company Podcast. Do More, Say Less is the title. And so I was actually doing less by trying to make my prayer longer because the intention was gone. as far as the reason we pray is to pray to our God, not so that we can go tell everybody how great we are at, saying long prayers. Because, you'll be in church or you'll be talking about, the gospel, and this happens to me. I don't know if you've experienced this, but this happens, and it happens often to a lot of people. You'll be talking about whose prayer life is better, or like somebody will be sitting there and they're like within a group discussion on the gospel, and they're like, they're just sharing their story, right? They're just like, yeah, when I wake up, yeah, I don't want to make it a silly thing, this part of it, but they're just sharing their story. Like me, for example. I'll use myself as an example in this. Listen to this. Because I do. I wake up every morning, or sometimes very late in the afternoon. But meaning, the first time, again, I want to just be real about it. I'm not trying to be like some kind of thing. I'm just trying to give a real example. The first thing I do when I wake up is say, all right, cool. And this is real. As in the way that I'm approaching this episode, how all over the place I am in this, and the emotion that I like keep having. This is real and it's good, and I'm clearing my throat. You never hear me clear my throat. I mean, it's so rare for you to ever hear me clear my throat. I mean, I just dropped my head. This is just real. This is like one of the most real, as in like hard hitting to me episodes up until this point of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Really. And it is, man. But because it's like I'm kind of battling it in a weird way. In a good way. And it's just hard hitting, dude. Because you'll be within a discussion, and let's say I'm talking about it. Somebody's like, all right, go around and say maybe, what keeps you centered throughout the week? And in my case, the first thing that I do when I wake up is listen to the Book of Mormon. I listen to it. I have the little device that I have, just, speak to me. Somebody has recorded their voice reading it, and I get to hear their voice saying it, right? And so I'll just push play and I'll just listen, whether it's a verse or whether it's an entire chapter or multiple chapters even. So, sometimes it's on either end of those things. But that is what I do. It's something that's not just some check off, right? Because that's when it becomes saying more and doing less. You do it every morning, but you just, hurry and click the play button until you can hear the person's voice saying something and click pause really quick so that you've checked it off. And I've said more now because I've told everybody that I do that in the morning, but I actually did less, because really what you were doing is just doing it to be able to say something about it, and you didn't actually do it, right? You did it just enough to be able to talk about. Let's do things on the other end, please. Let's do more and say less, because, again, we're in that group discussion and I just say something, like that. I'm like, yeah, well, what I do, and this one of the things that I do throughout my week, throughout every day, and this really does help me, and it does. Don't believe it, right? Because this is me speaking in the hypothetical, and I say this. Don't believe me. I mean it, right? I'm in the group discussions, like, you don't gotta believe me, but it really does help my life when I am really intentional about trying all that I can do to make the first thing that I do when I wake up be read or listen to any amount of scripture, even if it's only one verse. And this is just really what I do, right? And then there's somebody within the group that comments and like, wow, if I was like you got more to say or what, is what I'm thinking, I mean, people get the wrong intention. That's what I mean. I'm not doing it so that I can talk about it. I'm doing it because it helps me, right? I'm doing it because there's a reason to, whether anybody ever heard me speak about it or not, whether anybody knew that I ever had read a passage of scripture or not, right? I mean, I'm in a class, well, check this out, right? I mean, you're in a public setting like Institute, for example, within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where we get together and we have class discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, the truth of all things. And there's a lot of times within class, because I know a decent amount of Bible stories, Book of Mormon stories, right? And I understand them, the ways that I do, and whatever. And I want that whatever to mean, again, don't praise me about it. I'm not only doing it so that I can say things about it. That's what I'm saying. I'm getting into this because listen to this. I'm sitting within classes in Institute, and people are asking questions, the teacher, or like we're in group discussions and people, whatever. It doesn't matter exactly how it's asked, but the point is, if I have something I could say, let's focus on that word, say, right? The last part of this, do more, say less. I'm within these classes and a question gets asked and I know the story. And it's not just like I could have some kind of answer. But I mean, I have personal experience with what that Bible story, Book of Mormon story, right? True doctrine, scriptural, historical record story means to me in my personal life. And I mean, I could probably have a response to just about every single question that gets asked, right? But if I did that, then it becomes now I'm just saying stuff. Now I'm just sitting here saying more rather than doing more, right? The more you say, the less you do. In this case, because check this out. If you're just reading about scripture stories just so that you can have the right answers in class and you can say more about it, then you probably aren't really internalizing those answers that you've spoken. It's more of an external thing, right? Doing more is do more to better your being. Because you can do more to impress Susie until she dies. People die, right? Spend your whole life out there just saying things that'll impress Susie, and then she's not there anymore to impress. Now you realize you weren't really doing anything. You were just saying a bunch of stuff, right? But if you're living your life, realizing that you are your own being, and you're praying to our living God, and trying to, right? Who are you gonna please? No wonder. I feel like it's getting higher. but yeah, I mean, right? I mean, who are you gonna really please? You gonna be pleasing Susie? You out there telling her all this and that about you starting up this thing and you did that thing, and somebody's just over there in a conversation and they're talking about like this truck, and you don't need to be in their conversation, but oh, I can't help but overhear you were talking about trucks. I had 14 of those trucks, and I did so much work to them. You guys would have been so impressed. I don't care. Go do your work. If you're going to do your work, as far as if that's what you're doing, do it. Don't talk about it. For my sake. It's not going to help you, and I don't care. Right? I mean, we're supposed to be doing more and saying less. Meaning, do more than you say. It's not about like trying to increase the amount of things that we do, because like I'm saying with the scripture example, and I'll touch on it with like the example of giving a comment in a class as well. Reading scriptures, you can read one verse of scripture and get so much more from it than reading an entire chapter, which, you know, a chapter is filled with verses. Because if you're going into it with the intentionality of doing all you can to internalize what you need to get from what you're reading in this moment of reading scriptures, and you only read one verse, but it like fills you with what it needs to, now you've done more. Rather than essentially like saying less. What? Hold on. Well, yeah. In that case, it's like you've done more because the amount of scriptures you've read is kind of like the scriptures have said less to you as far as content and quantity of wordage, right? But they've done more for you within just one little verse. But now if you're thinking you just need to be talking about all this stuff, and you think the scriptures just need to be talking to you with the amount of wordage that you read an entire chapter, but your intention going into it was to read the entire chapter. Whether that means just speed reading it to, you know, check it off. Now you've done less, but you've read more, right? The scriptures have essentially, quote unquote, said more, word-wise, as in quantity of words you've read, but you've gotten less from it. Okay? That's beautiful. So yeah, like I'm saying, though, within the class setting, I'm pretty intentional about kind of holding my own tongue. Because even if I have some comments that could be beneficial, like I'm saying, I know Christ, right? It's not any kind of thing that anybody's got it. I'm no comparison, but I also have read a lot of scripture, and I understand quite a lot of the scripture stories, right? And in the way that I've internalized them and I can feel them. I can relate to these historical figures and these prophets and these, just kind of townsfolk, if you will, and on all ends of people in like the society spectrum. And I can see myself in them, and I can have a comment, sure. But within an hour-long class period, if I'm just sitting here responding to every comment just because I think I could have a response, and maybe even within every one of those responses, if there was quite a lot of them that I was saying, there was stuff that people were getting from it, now I'm just saying so much stuff. And guess who doesn't get to now? The other people in the class, because we got only an hour for this time that we're together, right? In the classroom setting, in the hypothetical. But me doing more is actually saying less. Me sitting here praying through it is the key. Saying, Father, what do you really want me to comment about throughout this class? Because I don't want to say more than you need. And really, like I just said, right? By me saying more, I actually am making it so that other people are only able to do less as far as their contribution to the class. And so I'm sitting there praying, right? And this is how we should be. I'm using myself as an example, but just because I'm trying to do this as well, because this is really what is very beneficial. I sit there and I say, like I just said, right? I'm in prayer saying, yeah, just only have me say the amount of things you need me to. And, if there's a really impactful comment you need me to have, we'll do more by saying less. A lot of like small, little impactful comments by me, well, we established what that can do to diminishing the ability for other people to have theirs. But me just trying to make sure that I'm listening and having my comments be doing more because I've said less, and within what I did say, I made sure that I was praying through using those words being something that is very, very impactful, if I do comment at all. Because that's the other thing. It's just the case. I really could probably have some sort of answer, at least in any kind of way, pointing people to Christ. That's the whole point we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, is to point people to Christ. As I've said many times in the past, well, I mean, for context for who you are, right? If you're not in my personal life, just within the Image Clothing Company podcast, even if somebody had never read any passage of Scripture, they could still know Christ intimately. And so that's the whole point of the gospel, right? It's not about speaking all these Scripture verses just for the sake of speaking the Scripture verses. Because again, now you're just talking about things, essentially. But it's about doing more of a deep dive into your own personal relationship with your living God. That's what it's about, more than just knowing all these scriptures, just for the sake of being able to recite them, but you're not really fully understanding just about any of them in those cases. That happens a lot. A lot of times there's scholars who could probably almost recite the entire Bible to you, right, out of memory. But maybe their focus has been on being able to do that rather than their own personal connection, regardless of what anybody else sees or thinks or hopes or wants them to be or anything. Their own connection on Jesus, with Jesus Christ, is where the focus should be. And I can tell you that, because that's not my opinion. That's what we're commanded. So a lot of times we're out here just saying stuff as people, dude, and it's so much better to just say less in a lot of cases. It really is. So, yeah, a lot of people just out here talking about things. It's like, they're getting ready to do something, so they'll keep talking about those times when they're going to get together to have a discussion on something, right? Talking about things, as in putting something off so that we can put it off again later. That's really what you're doing when you're just saying more, when you're just sitting there talking about it all the time. But if you do it, then you've done it. There's no procrastination to have. There's no hype to be there, right? I can't sit here and tell you that there's 66, as of this one, episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast and try to have some hype about what's coming if I'm mentioning what's here already, right? Because I've done it without talking about it. But I could sit here and let's say I hadn't made an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast yet, and I could look around at everybody and be like, hey, everybody, subscribe to this channel I just made. We're going to have so many episodes of this thing, and it's going to be huge, and everybody's got to just, like, get on board. And then I don't do it ever. I mean, I'm 66 episodes into this because I've done more without talking about it. Because it's not for the validation of human beings around me. It's for the truth that's within this. It's not about me, right? Some other guy could have been doing this. It's about the impact that comes from it. That's what I said toward the beginning of this. I definitely said something very similar to that. Because that's the case. If I was doing this for the validation, then each time that I'm out there and people are asking me, hey, what are you doing right now in your life? Instead of having my response be what it has been, saying, not much really. I'm not working right now and I'm not going to school, because those are like the two common things that people ask about in this time period. That's what it seems to be, right? Because no, I mean, this isn't work. Because when you're asking people if they're going to work, you mean normally what people mean is like a worldly job. And this is not a worldly job. Regardless of whatever, because this is going to be my lifelong company, and this is where my income is going to come from. An income is a worldly thing in a sense, but this as what it is isn't a job. This is me just doing what I'm supposed to. This is me just pounding some big old stakes into an ark. And Noah's 66 days into building his ark, and he can just show something for it, right? He's not talking about it for the sake of any kind of recognition, but he's already 66 days into building that thing, and he's like, I've done this, look at it, it's right here. Whether I say a word about it or not, that's it right there. That's the thing you're asking about. It's here. That's the one. Look at it. See? Right? That's like me sitting here right now, currently, saying what I'm saying about. I'm not trying to overly push something. I'm not trying to make some kind of big old expectations, because I don't care if you care. But I can say there's 66 episodes of the podcast. And I can say that without saying anything, right? I can say that without saying to that person who asked me, what are you doing with your life right now? Dude, you wouldn't believe it, man. You better be so impressed. I've made 66 Dude, listen to this, bro. I'm on episode 66 of the podcast that I started. I've done it all myself. You wouldn't believe the grind, brother, right? I don't want to get farther into that, but I could make that such a scene right now, describing it, or every time somebody asks me, what have you been up to this week, right? Because sometimes I'm building, sometimes I'm building my arc, meaning filming episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and I've got like 3-4 a week that I do. But I don't care if you know about it. I'm not out here to talk about it. I'm out here to do it. And I have. Because if I'm just saying that, people say it like that too, though. They'll go around saying like, yeah, bro, I'm just out here just doing a bunch of good stuff, brother. But what? Talking about the things that you might? No, you haven't done a single thing in those cases. Besides open your mouth. Said too many comments within a classroom and made it so other people couldn't. Right? You're actually doing less by saying more. That's almost always the case. So anyway, right? I mean, I feel like you see my position change, and you see, I kind of settled into this because I didn't want to come into this seeming egoic, right? Because I was saying, and I am doing, this, using myself as an example in a lot of cases throughout this. And I don't want it to be like the exact thing that I'm saying, right? I'm sitting here talking about how much I've been doing, right? No, I don't. That's why I'm chilling out right now, because I've given context and I've been able to explain it in a way where you can see what you got the potential to see what I'm saying, right? And that's what I wanted from this or through this, and just to take the focus off myself, because again, I'm out here preaching what I practiced. I've already done the things that I'm currently talking about, as in these words that I'm speaking now on episode 66. I'm talking about the past episode 66s, all 6 of the episodes times 10 plus 6, right? I'm just saying, I couldn't do something right now to try to hype something up that has happened, right? Because when you're talking about things you've done, all right, cool, that's different. But people are out here saying about, giving all the hype about how big it's gonna be before they start anything. Because I was on, within the episode, within like tens of episodes into the podcast, after having well over 100 videos on the main side of the company and establishing that there's 3 sides to the company and understanding all that I do at those points, right? When I was starting to say that In The Image Clothing Company is going to be huge, because I had laid a foundation. Not because I'm out here talking about something that's a hypothetical, that's a potential, that's a hope or a want, or maybe just some words to see if she'll like me. How often does that happen? People out here talking about things, but really they're just talking about things, saying like, hey, maybe one day I'll start something cool. So I'm gonna walk up to this kid and just like act as if it's just gonna be the coolest thing ever to impress him, right? But usually it's from one gender to the other opposite gender, right? To impress them, because, we're here to have families and, get married. And so a lot of people like to just talk about things to get someone to be impressed by them. But I'm sitting here with my head down, meaning like nose to the grindstone type of head down, right? Just doing the work. You don't got to think it's work. You don't got to understand it. But you can't deny that there's 66 episodes that I've made. You can't deny that there's the amount of videos that there are. You can't deny that I have spoken the words of understanding that I have on the only way the human body works. And that had to come from somewhere, my understanding of it. It's because I've taken the time to do the thing, regardless if I said a word about it or not up until this point, right? I've been out here doing more and saying less. Yeah? But it's kind of like what I say, how I don't like the praise and the congratulations, because I've talked in past episodes about, I'm good at stuff. And that's just the case. I just pick things up quick, and I'm just a capable person, right? So praise me, right? I want to make it obvious that's not what I'm asking for, is the praise, because that's the exact opposite end is what I'm making the point on right now. I'm really good at things, but I've said within past episodes of In The Image Clothing Company podcast, right, for example, I don't care for the congratulations, but I'm just doing what I'm doing. I'm just doing the thing, I'm praying through it, and now here we are, So it's humbling, because Noah's probably sitting there floating in what was once an empty, dry desert, and now X amount of depth of water in the ark that he finished. And he's probably just like, wow, shoot, I'm glad I did. I'm sitting here saying, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did more without asking people if it was a good thing to do or not first. Because now my body's in a state of function. Now I'm an example to people around me without saying any words, but just by the way that I stand. By how physically centered I am, because I did more and said less. And now the fruits of the labor are here. I didn't need to talk about it any more than I did talk about it for it to be what it is. Because, in fact, it would have almost certainly inhibited the amount of progress if I would have been talking about it. I just did it. So, I am using myself as an example because, again, I mean, there's no kind of opinion I can have on this. You can see it. You can go listen to every one of these podcast episodes. They're public. As of right now, I know they are, right? As of today's date. You can go check out the main site of In The Image Clothing Company as of today's date and see that there's well over 150 videos on there, and not just for the sake of cranking out content. Right? I mean, you can see, as of today's date, the videos that I've made for In The Image Clothing Company music, and I'm pretty good at playing guitar, and I'm entirely self-taught. What I want to be very clear to say is it's not about me and all my, successful endeavors, but it's about nobody really knows what I'm doing with this. I'm not only doing it because I'm seeing progress, because I'm not seeing that much, honestly. I mean, that's just how it is. I'm saying it because, I'm just doing it, dude. I'm just speaking on what's happening, right? As I say, we just talk about things as they are. Well, there you go. That's as it is. All these things are here. I can't make it something it isn't. If you can go on the internet and look up In The Image Clothing Company and see each of the separate 3 sides of the company and dive into them and see what is there, it's there. I can't make it be something it isn't by talking about it. Because I already did it. Somebody just knocked on our... You hear that? You heard that? I can almost guarantee that you heard that. Here's what I'm going to do, though. I'm not going to go check right now. Because where I used to live, we had somebody do that a couple times late at night like this. It's, into the night right now. And I don't remember what happened, but we ended up calling the police, and it was somebody who just doorbell ditching type of thing, right? They'd knock really hard and run away, and anyway, some people are just a little bit overstepping, a little bit out of line. But then also, if somebody does need help, I'm gonna just sit on it for a second, and we'll just pray through it. But anyway, I'm just in a house, by the way. I think that's, for if you're watching in visual, and if you have seen past episodes of In The Image Clothing Company podcast, I think I'm just in a house. I don't have some studio for the podcast. So that was just our front door, as far as I'm aware. Somebody knocked. Okay, right? I don't know what that was about. But I think that's a good example, actually. We'll use that as an example, and if anything more comes from that, we'll address it if and when we need to, but I don't think we will. I think that's done, whatever that was. But I will say this, because a lot of times people experience a lot of things like that. That was weird, right? And so now, if I were somebody else and I didn't just behave how I do, because this is not what I would do, but some people are this way. And I'm not trying to say somebody's better or worse, or I'm so much more mature than you, but this just goes along with the title of Doing More and Saying Less in the Image Clothing Company podcast, episode 66, right? A lot of people, they'll experience anything throughout their week, and it was the level of excitement or whatever that this was, and then they get in those conversations, somebody asks them, "What'd you do this week?" And they'll be like, "Well, I was sitting on the floor, and somebody just pounded on my front door, dude. I don't even know what it was about. It was so unexpected. Can you believe that?" And then they'll get into this whole storytelling about what just happened, and I love that. Maybe that, right? I don't mean to make this something it isn't, but maybe that really was placed for the sake of including it within this episode of the podcast, because yeah, growing up, there's a lot of people in my life that they experienced something that was like the slightest bit out of the ordinary, and then they just go talk about it. And they'd waste their time telling their own experience and situation and story to many other human beings who don't care, right, for something that didn't need to be talked about. Like, I don't need to go tell anybody that this happened. If this wasn't being filmed, I wouldn't be talking about it, right? But it happened during the episode. Unless I was using it to say a similar thing, right? To make a point on doing more and saying less. I mean, doing more in the sense of you just experience a bunch of weird stuff in your life. What is happening? My life looks so crazy and nobody else seems to at this time, right? You're looking around in times of our lives, that's what it seems like. But you don't got to go talk about it. It just happened and it's done. And so there it is, right? I mean, I never have to mention this again for it to be what it was, because it happened and I don't have to say more, right? Right? I mean, it's stuff like that. I mean, because a lot of people, that's what they'll do. They'll fill their conversations with just stuff that has happened. But then what you're doing is you're spending time talking about things that already occurred when you could use that time to experience more things. Then you're doing more because you have said less. See what I mean? Do more, say less, brother. I mean, that's just the only way you're actually gonna experience things, because it's like people are trying to re-experience and re-experience and re-experience and re-experiencing one event each time they talk about it. And it only happened that one time. Every time you tell a story, that's a new experience. You're telling the exact same story, but the thing that's happening is actually you speaking on the story. That story isn't happening again, nor does it need to be spoken on again, right? Go do something else, because that's already happened. So stop talking about it, right? It's stuff. It's on that end as well, kind of like more like past events, if you will, rather than just, because what I've been saying mostly up until this is like foreseeing what's going to happen and talking it up. But it's on the back end of things that have happened as well. I mean, a lot of people, that's the accumulation of their conversations as past events, and they've replayed that story that they're telling you sometimes hundreds, thousands of times. And, sometimes it's not wrong to tell a story about something that happened, because I tell stories within In The Image Clothing Company podcast. I talk about, like, my past experiences to use them to have it be something other people can relate to and to speak a message through, right? I mean, that's why I always say times and places, but we got to realize that we're not allowed to do things if we're spending our time just blabbering. So that's what I'm saying. I think that was an example of that, because I don't need to tell anybody. Like now next week, I'm out in public and people are asking me, oh, what happened to you this week? Well, because that's a question that gets asked. I'm not mocking the question, because that can be okay in ways and times and whatever. And I'm not trying to tell you how to talk to other people as far as like I'm in charge of you, because I'm not. But what I mean is, ideally, don't waste your own time within pointless conversation, right? If you can help it. And you almost always can. I mean, unless you're really like tied up, right? I mean, how real can we make it? But here's the thing. This week, let's say somebody asks me, because this is a common question, oh, hey, what's up? Anything exciting happened to you this week? I could just be like, well, I could just say, man, dude, it was crazy, bro. I was sitting there on my floor and people pounding on my door. Or I could be like, yeah, not really, dude. I mean, things come as they come and go as they go, and the grass grows and gets mowed, and so right? I mean, that's how I normally approach it. I don't always like rhyme, but usually when people ask me, even if I had a pretty exciting week, even if I just got back from like a vacation I've been like thinking about having for years or whatever, right? I mean, like, it could be anything. That's what I mean. It could be the most exciting week that I have had in my life. But if they ask me, I don't have to say it. I can just be like, I mean, it's just what happened, man. I mean, what's up with you, And I mean, like, just be casual with it, because now maybe you can do more, as in experience more understanding of the people that are in conversation with you, by maybe hearing a story that then gives you more depth of being, rather than telling the story that you've already experienced, But that's why I say times and places, because, yeah, that story could maybe help the other person, right? Your vacation story, but I don't know. I mean, it's so often we're just replaying things over and over and over and over again. And the time you spend talking is time that you can't spend doing. Do more, say less. Because if you're only talking to hopefully get, like, praise from the person that you're saying these things to, right? Or, like, they'll probably think that I'm just, like, so adventurous because I went on a hike. Yeah, it's about 500 feet, but, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's stuff like that. Like, don't do it to get the gratification. Don't say it just to get the gratification. On both ends. Either of those things. But just do what you're supposed to do because you're praying through it. And don't talk about it, regardless of how miraculous it was, unless you're being prompted to, because you're telling, like, a miracle story that somebody needs to hear, and you can tell, and you're being prompted, and like, yeah, this person needs to hear this story, so I'm gonna tell them this story. That's obviously different. If it's not obvious to you, then, well, okay, it's different. Man, I mean, when I'm around people, it's almost always the case that I almost don't even say any words, right? Because now what I am doing is actually experiencing the moment. When you're just talking and filling silence with words because then you are saying things, you're not experiencing the moment, right? You're doing less because you're saying more. So, yeah. Just do more and say less, right? I mean, people hype up their album that they're going to produce for 10 years. Meanwhile, the other person's putting out a song every weekend. They're doing more and just not talking about it. But this person's talking it up, and then maybe it never actually comes out, Like, just do it, dude. I mean, it's like on In the Image Clothing Company music, whether it's off tempo and off key and out of tune or whatever, I just put music out. Like, don't let me talk about something, right? But let me tell you what I have done. I mean, let me speak for what's happened, not like how much I'm gonna do. No, I mean, because this is a great example in itself, right? Again, using myself as the example, not so you can look up to me, but just because, again, context on I'm practicing what I preach, but really all I'm doing is preaching what I have practiced. I love it on the other end, because that's the end that it's on in my experience. That's what I'm saying, right? I mean, there's so many little nuggets of music that I've put out within the past month on In the Image Clothing Company music. I mean, I say the dates and a lot of things. You can check the dates of when things were posted. I mean, what, you're gonna catch me in my lies and think that now I'm just saying stuff? I mean, like, I just want to make it so silly to where it's just real. What I mean is, though, I've put out enough pieces of music within the past month that could have been 2 full albums. As far as just, if you're saying an album is classified as this amount of songs that are this length, and now you place them onto 2 separate things, and now you have 2 separate albums. I mean, I've done that within the past month, if we're trying to be all impressive about it, right? But again, I don't talk about it. I'm just doing it. Because whether anybody cares or not, it's what's happened, so there it is. Whether anybody says anything about it, it's right there. As far as, look up In the Image Clothing Company music, right? And I can't make it something it isn't by using words about it. So anyway, a lot of people hyping up albums for 10, 15 years. It's not an exaggeration in some cases, but even, a year. A lot of times people maybe put out an album a year, every 2 or 3 years when they're making music. And it's like, no, just make music. Just do the thing. Don't talk about it. You can talk about it once it's done, but just because it's there, right? I mean, I think a big part of it is it's actually humbling. As much as I am talking about myself and how I'm doing the thing that I'm saying is a good thing to do, it's humbling to me, because I remember in the past times when I didn't feel like I was doing very much, but I was hearing like Russ the rapper's line, right? And that's what this episode is titled. Episode 66 of In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, Do More, Say Less. And then he went on and he said what he did and stuff, right? But those are the words that I'm focusing on. Those are the words that are what they are, as in, I mean, yeah. I remember hearing that because I was working at this place and I was refurbishing firefighting equipment, right? Packs and cylinders and masks. And I'm in this little warehouse and just like felt like my life was wasting away, truly. And I listened to Russ's song then, and it hit me. I'm like, man, yeah, because Russ himself, and I'm just talking about somebody else who has an experience that is similar to what I'm saying here, right? Giving some context on where I'm coming from this, out of personal experience and understanding of what this means before I was doing this myself, as far as doing more than I was speaking about. Because, and I'll get into it a little bit more because this is awesome. Yeah, context on this end as well that I'm going to say. But yeah, I was just sitting there, felt like I wasn't doing anything. I was working my life away, but for no reason other than currency, right? Compensation of really just a number on a screen, because I'd look at a bank account, whatever that means, and the number would change, which is really just little pixels displaying different colors and a different shape that represents what we call money. And so I really wasn't doing much of anything, even though I was working my life away, right? I was working for no reason other than that, and it was pointless. And so Russ hit me with that line, as far as that line that he said hit me really deeply to my core. And because Russ put out a lot of albums before he got off the ground, right? He was just making music. He was just doing the thing. And then now he's talking about it after it's been done, right? So, but let me say it on this end for some context of me on both ends, because I'm the one that's discussing this. So that might be something that's awesome. I used to be on social medias. I currently don't have any, and I haven't for over 2 years. Well over 2 years, 2.5 to maybe 3 from this point back, right? Today's date that I said. But I used to just get on social media, dude, and I was just like saying all this stuff, basically, right? Just like always trying to get the validation of things that I barely did, just enough to where I could take a photograph about it, right? You show up at a party just for the sake of, I could probably take a photo here. My homies would know I came. But I didn't go. I wasn't actually there. I was only there for the photograph. I wasn't there for the event that was actually happening, right? I was talking about it more than I was doing it. I didn't experience the party, but I sure had a lot of photos to just talk about, right? That's what I mean. Doing more and saying less. Put the devices down and be there, because you're not really there when you're there. But your Instagram will say otherwise, right? Your MySpace will say otherwise. Your dating app will say otherwise. You know what I mean? You're saying more than you're doing, because you didn't actually do those things. You just scratched the surface of maybe almost doing it just enough to where you can talk about it. Let's do it on the other end, please. Let's just do things, regardless of if we ever say anything about it or not. Do things, because that's how you're going to actually do things that matter. Because how you're actually going to be fulfilled is by the gratification within you that comes through conviction from our living God, Jesus Christ. And that happens whether your mouth opens or not, whether anybody sees those photos you took or not, right? Listen to this. Talk about doing more and saying less. Jesus Christ would heal people and say, do not tell people that I healed you, because it wasn't about saying more about it. It was about doing it. Right? People would get healed by Jesus Christ himself 2,000 years ago when he was here. And they'd be like, how could I ever repay you? What can we do? What can we give you? How can we compensate you? And he'd say, this is how, actually. Don't say anything about it. Right? Christ heals the leper. And he says, yeah, go do the cleansing ritual as you've been told to do under the law of Moses and go about your business. Don't tell anybody. Right? Talk about doing more and saying less. Jesus Christ would be healing people behind the scenes and asking them to not tell others, because it was about the experience, not about the words that could come from the experience, not about the popularity that he could have because you got to get healed by the Messiah and everybody else wants to. And dude, hey Johnny, look at him. This guy got healed. Look, and all of a sudden there's all the validation that's coming from other equal to him human beings. No, what Christ wanted him to do was internalize what just happened, because the thing just happened. He did the thing. Right? But in all seriousness. And not for the sake of having people talk about it, but for the sake of that person and their experience and what was allowed to happen. Right? Again, whether the flood ever came or not, Noah still built the boat. Right? So let's do some more things than we say. Meaning, do the amount that you're already doing, but not for the reason of being able to talk about it afterward. And then what you are doing might look a little bit different once you approach it that way, because then you're doing it for reasons that are actually real, rather than for a little double tap on a piece of glass that we call a like on our social media accounts. That's talking about it. Leave your phone at home, right? Turn off the TV. I like TV in ways, actually, which is something I never really realized I did like until recently. But there's been some TV shows that I've been so grateful to be able to have the opportunity to watch, and that I've been so grateful for everybody who's gone into making them what they are. But as far as, don't do things just to take a photograph about it. I mentioned in one of these past episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, I think it was actually episode 64, the last one. Oh, that wasn't the last one. That was 2 back from this one. Either way, it might have been episode 65 then, the last episode. But one of the past few, I mentioned I used to be a photographer, and I'm a really good photographer, but same thing, right? I had a photography account on a social media, whatever that is, right? And, well, whatever an account is as well. It's just a place where I placed my photos, right? I don't know, it's silly. I was taking a lot of photos, and they were great. Very, very good photos. But a lot of times I was doing it just so that people would see. Right? It's essentially just like talking about things rather than just doing them to do them. But a lot of times, right, photographers will say this kind of thing as well. Like, they'll be in a moment when they could take a photo that could probably be one of the best photos they've ever taken, most impactful and amazing in their life. But they get into that moment and they frame up the shot and they don't take it. But they just sit there and experience the moment instead. That's doing more and saying less, right? It's things like that. So I definitely have experienced that through many different ways. But yeah, leave your phone at home. It'll surprise you. If you almost always have some kind of like technological device with you, and you're like, used to opening it up, turning it on, going to it, looking through it, taking a photograph with it or a video with it or whatever it is, try to not have it with you for one of these events that you're going to, that you know about, or just like the next one that does come up, and see what happens. because then you're going to actually be there doing the thing rather than just being there to be able to talk about it. Right? So, yeah, a lot of times it's so beneficial to go without things, and we talk about that. Less really is more. It's cases like that. I mean, you can be so worked up about taking all the photographs so you don't forget the event to where you don't experience the event. But you can have a representation of it to talk about, right? I mean, that's how it is, dude. Again, that's something I did so much in the past. And now I've transcended reality and I'm a flightless bird. You know what I mean? Oh, gosh. Flightless bird. Yeah, brother, I'm out there swimming on my belly, eating fish. Got me a penguin. Transcended reality. That's funny, dude. That's so awesome. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm so grateful for this because you start talking about a topic like this and you sound egoic if you don't give some good context, at least potentially, not in every case. If people get what you're saying, then that's great. But there's a lot of people just being like, he's just talking about how much he does and he's better than me again. That Evan Strong always saying how much better than me he is, right? It gets received like that if you're not careful. And whatever, you receive it how you receive it. But on my end, I do love to be able to give a lot of context because it's just awesome, dude. I mean, that's doing the thing, right? I'm sitting here and I'm not just like putting out 3-minute podcast episodes so I can just get to that. Man, I think if I could make them as short as I can, and I can tell everybody I've got 100 episodes of something that I did, it doesn't even really matter what I fill them with. Let's just do it, and so that I can speak about it, and you getting all excited, and your hair's standing up on the top of your head, and it's like you just stuck your finger in a toaster, right? No, that's why I'm so appreciative for how long these are, because it's about what I have really done, not about what it looks like, not about what I can say, but what have I actually said, right? I mean, because these are podcast episodes, and that's what I do is I speak through them. So I'm so grateful for this. It's awesome. Okay, so my name is Evan Strong, like I said, and have said many times throughout this in many different ways of approaching, like speaking about myself in first person and third person, and that person who was the fourth one also probably said something about me, and hopefully it was kind, because please don't gossip. But I'm the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. This is our podcast where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, as we have done here. Now, the last two words in our name are valid as far as applying to what we are. We are a clothing company. We will have clothing available made out of 100% natural materials. What I say, right, is staying centered, fitting correct, allowing the body to work. Because in order to have that last thing happen, allowing the body to work has to come with the prerequisite of clothing fitting correct and staying centered. Otherwise, the body will be altered. So just with that context, please try to do all that you can to purchase it in your size. If you ever purchase In The Image Clothing Company clothing, it's a common thing and has been throughout when it has, right? Comes up and it becomes a little bit less at times, and then it comes popular again or whatever, and for reasons it happens that are not just about fashion, but oversized clothing. It's damaging to the body, so just please try to have it fit where we say. That's why I say within the intros where clothing needs to fit, because that's just how the body works. Muscles only do what they do, skeletal system only does what it does, and we get into the anatomy in such depth, and in certain places where we do throughout the company, we have, is what I mean. There's already content. Again, I'm doing it so that I can talk about it, right? Do more, say less. I've practiced it so that I can preach about it, right? It's on the back end. That's where I'm trying to sit, is in that kind of way. Paradoxical kind of stuff. The paradoxical gospel of Jesus Christ, right? So anyway, yeah, there we go. Great. Really, though. So it's the 21st of February, 2025. And this is something that has filled me as far as like that confirmation, right? Finishing the arc, and just here comes the drops of rain. And it's like, yeah, there was a reason to do this. That's what I'm feeling right now with this one specific episode here. It has filled me because I know that this is something good. that I was told to do, and I did.